some of the emerging trends, I think, importantly, that we're finding, some of the information that is coming out of the department, ESFA. Already had some conversations over the coffee break about 20% off the job, which seems to be frightening everybody to death. And really, I think very much how you can work with 20% off the job, because it's not day release. It never has been day release. But I think it's important with 20% off the job that we actually reflect on whether you're an employer or whether you're a provider such as ourselves, about why we have 20% off the job, because it's much more about the spirit of 20% off the job as against 20%. So in terms of 3A's, just very, very quickly, in terms of where we are, we now have as a business around about £40 million worth of levy, what we call under management. Doesn't mean we're delivering it all, but we're managing around about £40 million worth of levy activity. And for us as a business, and you talk about learning and development, you talk about the challenges that Richard talked about there, that for us is £40 million worth of brand new business. That isn't replacing any existing business. So our business as a business has doubled overnight since April 2017, and that in itself creates lots of opportunity, but also challenges. So our board meeting tomorrow, it's all about people. Our board meeting is all about that and the opportunity and how we do it. In the public sector, we are on around about 25 frameworks. And what I say there is, but what does that mean? It just gets you, if I filled in our company registration number once, I think I've done it about 150 times over the last 4 months. But an emerging amount of activity in the public sector. We're doing a lot of work with city councils, a lot of work with county councils, a lot of work in the health sector as well, particularly around that leadership and management piece. And we'll talk a little bit about that going forward. In terms of the levy itself, by the end of November, we'll have about 1,000 learners on programme. So quite a significant number of learners across a whole range of different businesses and a different set of organisations. So a huge opportunity, a huge challenge for us as a business, and one that we are absolutely determined to get right in terms of working with our customers and also developing our own team to actually deliver that effectively. So a little bit about the big picture, really. So what's the big picture showing? Well, I think we all know that data. 2.5 billion of tax being collected by the government each year through the levy. Approximately 19,000 employers. You're all paying 0.5% of your payroll. But only 4% of all employers in the UK at the moment are currently paying the levy, collecting about 2.5 billion. Really interesting statistic. Only 50% of the 19,000 employers have actually registered on the DAS system. And actually, if you look at the data, the number of registrations is actually declining very rapidly. It's less than 100 a month. So there are about 9,500 to 10,000 employers that are paying the levy, but haven't even registered on how they're going to access it, and actually don't even know how much they've got in their pot. 10,000 employers that haven't actually registered. This, I think, is a really interesting statistic, and I think a really interesting statistic from a political perspective. If we go back to what the levy was all about, the levy was all about encouraging employers to take on 16 to 18-year-olds and give young people opportunities in apprenticeships. Whether that is right or wrong, only 15% of all enrolments are in that 16 to 18 category. That will change. There is no doubt that that will change. That's of big concern to the government. And I think what you will find in the not too distant future is that there will be incentives given to you as levy payers to encourage you to take more 16 to 18-year-olds on. I don't know what that answer is, but it will be such things as you'll be able to use your levy to subsidise payroll in that category. And that, if you read the Tory manifesto, actually it was in the Tory manifesto that you can use levy for, or you will be able to use levy. I think that will come in from the discussions we're having, it will come in and will be restricted to that age group. And similarly, they will put greater incentives into encouraging employers to take on 16 to 18-year-olds. 60% of all activities is in leadership and management at level 3 and 5 of existing workforce across the country. Never the intention of what the levy was about. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong or indifferent, but I don't think that that's going to continue or be allowed to continue in the long term. It's probably got a life of 3, 4, 5 years. It's not something that's going to change immediately. But if you look at the political connotations of actually replacing leadership and management through apprenticeships, is that really what it was about? A really interesting statistic, and one, and we're the largest provider of CMI qualifications now in the UK. Government have assumed that only, even when the levy's operational and everybody's up and running, only 70% of the levy will get spent. So £500 million of the levy per year will never get spent and will go into the Treasury's coffers. And in the first year, currently the employers we're working with, we think employers will be spending only about 30% of their levy pots in the first year. Some will pay nothing, some will pay 30%. And I think probably 5 or 6 months ago, we were saying, don't rush, don't rush, don't rush. You've got plenty of time. You've got 2 years before you lose your May 2017 payment. And I think the answer is still, don't rush. But if you're sitting here in 6 months with only 30% of your levy pot spent, you are going to be faced with a situation where you are going to start to lose it in a year's time off the other end. And therefore, you've got probably 5 to 6 months to really start to put in momentum in order to move that forward.